A poor boy risks his life to save an unknown girl from two dangerous thugs. He had no idea that she was the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country. What the girl's father did shocked everyone. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The south side of Chicago had its own pulse, its own unwritten language. Ethan Riley knew every syllable of it, every rhythm, every warning sign that normal people couldn't read. At 17, he'd mastered the art of being invisible while seeing everything. That particular Friday afternoon was no different as he made his usual rounds through Englewood, collecting discarded cans and bottles that could be exchanged for a few precious dollars at the recycling center. That's when he saw her. She stood out like a firework against the night sky. Designer clothes, expensive phone in hand, map app open, completely oblivious to where she was or what lurked around her. Her copper-red hair shimmered in the afternoon sun, her freckled face a portrait of confusion as she squinted at her phone, then at the street signs. Everything about her screamed, "Not from here." Ethan might have kept walking, should have kept walking. The girl's problems weren't his, but then he noticed two figures across the street, watching her with the calculating stare of hunters who'd just spotted easy prey. Marcus Dawson and Ray Colton, local troublemakers who'd graduated from playground bullying to more serious pursuits. They weren't gang-affiliated, but dangerous enough on their own. Before he could think it through, Ethan was moving. Years of navigating these streets had made him quick, silent. He reached the girl just as Marcus and Ray began crossing toward her. "Don't scream," Ethan whispered, taking her arm firmly. "Just follow me right now." The girl's green eyes widened with fear. "Let go of—" "3 seconds and those guys will be on you," Ethan hissed, nodding subtly toward the approaching men. "Your choice." Something in his voice must have convinced her. She glanced over her shoulder, saw the men, and the resistance in her arm vanished. Ethan pulled her quickly into the narrow alleyway between two brick buildings, then behind a dumpster, pressing his finger to his lips. Moments later, they heard footsteps at the alley entrance. "Where'd she go?" Marcus's raspy voice echoed. "Must have turned the corner," Ray answered. "Come on, we can catch up." Their footsteps receded. Ethan counted to 60 before peering out. The street was clear. "Who are you?" the girl demanded, backing away from him now that the immediate danger had passed. Her voice had a slight tremor, but her chin was raised defiantly. "And why would those men be after me?" "I'm nobody," Ethan replied with a shrug. "And they weren't after you specifically, just an opportunity." He gestured at her outfit, her phone, the delicate gold bracelet on her wrist. "You might as well have a target painted on your back in this neighborhood. What are you doing here anyway?" The girl straightened her jacket. "I'm looking for the Urban Revival Center. I'm supposed to interview the director for my school newspaper." Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "The URC is 15 blocks north of here. Your app led you to the wrong place entirely." He studied her for a moment. "What school sends their students to Englewood alone for a newspaper article?" "North Shore Academy," she answered, her tone suggesting he should recognize the name. When his expression remained blank, she added, "It's a private school in Evanston." "Of course it is." Ethan shook his head. "Look, you need to get out of here. The nearest safe bus stop is about 10 blocks that way." He pointed north. "Or you can call someone to pick you up. Just don't stand around here looking lost." The girl pulled out her phone. "I'll call my driver." Of course she had a driver. Ethan started to walk away. "Wait," she called after him. "I don't even know your name." "Doesn't matter," he replied, without turning around. "I'm Olivia Bennett." Ethan paused, glancing back at her. "Good for you." "Thank you," she said, the words sounding awkward, as if she rarely had to use them. "For helping me." Ethan nodded once and continued walking. He had bottles to collect, and this detour had already cost him valuable time. He didn't look back again, didn't see her watching him, didn't notice how she took a photo of his retreating figure before her sleek black car arrived to whisk her back to her privileged world. William Bennett's corner office on the 42nd floor of the Bennett Technologies building offered a panoramic view of Chicago's glittering skyline. At 53, William had built his tech empire from a small software startup to one of the most powerful companies in the Midwest. The company specialized in security systems and had recently expanded into government contracts that William knew would double their already substantial profits. He barely glanced up when his assistant announced his daughter's arrival. "Send her." "In," he said, eyes still fixed on the quarterly report spread across his desk. Olivia entered, setting her school bag on one of the leather chairs across from his desk. "Hi, Dad." "How was school?" William asked automatically, still not looking. Fine," Olivia replied, the standard exchange they'd perfected over the years. "Actually, something happened today." William's phone rang and he held up one finger to silence her as he answered. "Bennett?" "Yes, Marshall. I saw the projections." "No, that's unacceptable. We need to push back on that valuation." Olivia sighed and moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. From up here, Chicago looked pristine, orderly, perfect. So different from the neighborhood she'd wandered into earlier, so different from the world that boy, Ethan, inhabited. William ended his call 15 minutes later, having completely forgotten his daughter was waiting. He looked up, seemingly surprised to see her still there. "Sorry about that. What were you saying?" "Nothing important," Olivia said, turning from the window. "Just school stuff." William nodded, already reaching for another file. "Dinner's on your own tonight. I have a board meeting that will run late." "Again?" Olivia couldn't keep the disappointment from her voice, though she knew better than to expect anything else. "That's how business works, Olivia. Speaking of which, did you finish that interview for your school paper, the one with the charity director?" "No," she admitted. "There was a mix-up with the location." William frowned. "You need to be more organized. These extracurriculars matter. For college applications." "I know, Dad." "Good, now I need to prepare for this meeting. Simmons will drive you home." Olivia picked up her bag, recognizing the dismissal. As she reached the door, her father called after her. "Oh, and Olivia, make sure you stay away from the south side. It's not safe there." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "How did you know I was there?" "The car's GPS tracking," William replied absently, already engrossed in his documents again. "It sends alerts when the vehicle enters certain areas. Of course, her movements were tracked. Of course, her father monitored where she went without telling her. Privacy was just another luxury that William Bennett controlled." Ethan returned. To the abandoned warehouse he called home, just as the sun was setting. The building had been scheduled for demolition years ago, but city bureaucracy had stalled the process, creating an unintentional shelter for him and a handful of other homeless individuals who kept to themselves. His corner was small but organized, a mattress salvaged from a dumpster, cleaned and covered with blankets he'd collected from donation drives, a plastic tote containing his few clothes, and his prized possession, an old guitar missing its sixth string. Today's haul of recyclables had earned him $11.37. Not great, but enough to buy some bread and peanut butter that would last a few days. As he ate his simple dinner, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the girl Olivia Bennett. He'd seen her type before, rich kids slumming it for school projects or social media posts about the real Chicago. They came, they took their photos, they left, never staying long enough to understand anything about life here. But something about her had been different. The way she'd said thank you like she wasn't used to needing help. The flash of genuine fear in her eyes when she realized the danger. The curiosity that replaced it once she felt safe. Ethan shook his head, trying to dislodge her from his thoughts. People like Olivia Bennett didn't exist in his world except as fleeting ghosts. Tomorrow she'd be back in her mansion, and he'd be back collecting bottles. Their paths would never cross again. He was wrong. The following morning, Ethan was awakened by a familiar voice outside the warehouse. He peered through a crack in the wall and froze. There she was, the red-haired girl from yesterday, wearing jeans and a simple hoodie this time, but still unmistakably out of place. She was walking slowly along the perimeter of the building, looking around as if searching for something or someone. "Ethan," she called. "Are you here? It's Olivia from yesterday." Ethan pressed back against the wall, heart hammering. How had she found him? Why was she looking for him? And most importantly, what was he going to do about it? Ethan remained frozen for several seconds, debating his options. He could stay hidden, the most sensible choice, or he could find out what this privileged girl wanted from him. Curiosity won. He grabbed his worn jacket and made his way to the side entrance of the warehouse. "How did you find me?" he asked, stepping into view but keeping his distance. Olivia spun around, relief washing over her face. "You're here?" Then, regaining her composure, she shrugged with feigned nonchalance. "It wasn't that hard. I asked around." "You asked around? In this neighborhood?" Ethan couldn't hide his disbelief. That was incredibly stupid. "I was careful," she insisted, "and I dressed down." She gestured to her outfit, as if the absence of designer labels made her invisible. Ethan laughed despite himself. Her dressed down look probably cost more than everything he owned combined. "What do you want, Olivia Bennett?" She hesitated, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a paper bag. "I brought breakfast, as a thank you." The smell of fresh pastries wafted toward him, making his stomach clench. Pride battled with hunger as he stared at the bag. "I'm not a charity case," he said, even as his body betrayed him by taking a step forward. "It's not charity. It's gratitude." She held out the bag. "You helped me yesterday when you didn't have to." After a moment's hesitation, Ethan took the bag. Inside were still warm croissants, muffins, and a container of orange juice. Real food, not the day-old bread he usually scavenged. "Thanks," he muttered, then gestured vaguely toward the warehouse entrance. "Want to sit?" Olivia nodded, following him to a stack of wooden pallets that served as makeshift seating. She perched on the edge of one, looking around with poorly disguised curiosity. "So this is where you live?" "Sometimes," Ethan replied, deliberately vague. He took a bite of a chocolate croissant, savoring the rich flavor. "Why are you really here, Olivia? Can't be just to deliver pastries." She fidgeted with the strap of her backpack. "I wanted to interview you." "Interview me?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "Remember I mentioned my school newspaper? I'm doing a piece on urban inequality and I'm your perfect poverty poster child." Ethan cut her off, his voice hardening. "Sorry to disappoint, but I'm not interested in being your homework assignment." Olivia flushed. I didn't mean..." She took a deep breath. "You're right, that was insulting, and I'm sorry." The sincerity in her apology caught him off guard. Rich people, in his experience, rarely admitted fault. "The truth is," she continued, "I can't stop thinking about yesterday. About how you knew exactly what was happening before it happened. About how those men looked at me like I wasn't even a person." She looked down at her hands. "I've been thinking about how I never see any of this from my school, my house, my dad's office. It's like I live in a completely different city." "You do," Ethan said simply. "Chicago's full of invisible walls. People like you never have to see people like me unless you choose to. And that's what I'm trying to do now, see?" She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. "Not for an article. For me." Something in her expression made Ethan pause. There was an earnestness there that seemed genuine, a hunger for understanding that he hadn't expected. "1 hour," he finally said. "I'll show you around. After that, you go back to your world and I stay in mine. Deal?" Olivia nodded eagerly. "Deal." William Bennett stared at the file folder his security chief had placed on his desk. "This is everything?" he asked, flipping through the documents. "Yes, sir," replied Richard Simmons, the ex-military man who'd served as both William's driver and head of security for the past decade. "Everything on Marcus Dawson and Raymond Colton, former employees in your cybersecurity division, terminated 8 months ago during the reorganization." William scanned the reports, noting the multiple complaint forms filed by both men before their dismissal. Complaints about accounting irregularities, about certain contracts that didn't seem to follow proper protocols. Complaints that had been efficiently buried by his HR department. "They've been seen around Ms. Olivia's school twice in the past week," Simmons continued. And yesterday, when the car's GPS showed her in Inglewood, our surveillance picked up both men in the vicinity. William's jaw tightened. You think they were following her? It seems likely, sir. Given their history with the company and their recent financial difficulties, we should consider them potential threats. Increase security on Olivia immediately. I want someone watching her at all times. Already done, sir. There's one more thing. Simmons hesitated. The GPS shows Miss Olivia returned to Englewood this morning. She was there for approximately 2 hours before returning home. William frowned. What the hell is she doing there? Did you see who she was meeting? A local boy, street kid by the looks of him. Teenager, maybe 17 or 18. William's frown deepened. Olivia had always been rebellious, but this was different. This was dangerous. I want everything you can find on this boy, and I want Olivia's movements restricted. Tell her driver he's not to take her anywhere but school and approved activities. Yes, sir. After Simmons left, William stared out his window at the Chicago skyline. 8 years ago, when his wife Caroline had passed away, he'd promised to protect their daughter from anything that might harm her. He'd built his company into a fortress, insulated their lives with wealth and security protocols. And now Olivia was deliberately walking into dangerous situations, meeting with street kids from the worst parts of the city. He wouldn't allow it. He couldn't. There was too much at stake, not just Olivia's safety, but everything he'd built, everything he'd sacrificed for. And this is Monroe Gardens, Ethan said, gesturing to a small patch of green squeezed between two dilapidated buildings. A handful of raised beds contained struggling vegetables and herbs, tended by a group of elderly residents. The community started it 3 years ago, gives people fresh food when the nearest grocery store is over 2 miles away. Olivia watched as an old woman carefully watered a tomato plant. It's beautiful, she said softly. Their hour had stretched into 2 as Ethan led her through his neighborhood, showing her the pockets of hope amid the struggle. The community center run on donations, the makeshift basketball court where kids played under the watchful eyes of volunteer coaches, the wall of murals painted by local artists. He'd also shown her the reality, the abandoned buildings, the lack of resources, the ever-present tension that hung in the air. He'd explained the unspoken rules, which streets to avoid, which strangers not to make eye contact with, how to carry yourself to avoid becoming a target. How do you know all this? Olivia asked as they sat on a bench near the garden. I mean, where did you learn to navigate everything so well? Ethan was quiet for a moment. My mom taught me some of it. Before she got sick, the rest I learned by watching, by making mistakes. He rubbed the scar on his left forearm absently. You adapt or you don't make it. What happened to your mom? Olivia asked softly. Cancer. 3 years ago. We couldn't afford proper treatment. His voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. She was in a lot of pain at the end. I'm so sorry, Olivia hesitated. My mom died too, car accident when I was 9. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. That's tough. Yeah, Olivia twisted a bracelet on her wrist, a delicate gold chain with a small heart pendant. This was hers. It's the only thing of hers I wear every day. They sat in shared silence for a moment, 2 motherless children from opposite ends of the social spectrum, finding an unexpected point of connection. What about your dad? Olivia asked eventually. Ethan's expression hardened. Never met him, don't know who he is, don't care. Oh, Olivia looked down. My dad's complicated. After Mom died, he just threw himself into work. Sometimes I think he looks at me and just sees problems to be managed. At least he looks at you, Ethan said, then immediately regretted the bitterness in his voice. Sorry, that wasn't fair. Olivia shook her head. No, you're right. I shouldn't complain. I have everything I could need except someone who sees me, she finished quietly. Not the Bennett heiress, just me. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, an understanding that despite everything that separated them, they shared a kind of invisibility. Different types, different causes, but the same hollow feeling. Ethan's phone, an ancient flip model he'd found and repaired, buzzed in his pocket. The screen showed a text from Mrs. Hernandez at the community center. A plumbing emergency needed immediate attention, and Ethan was one of the few people who could fix it without charging professional rates. "I have to go," he said, standing. "Someone needs help at the center." "Oh." Disappointment colored Olivia's voice. "I should head back anyway. My dad will freak if I'm gone too long." Ethan hesitated, then pulled a scrap of paper from his pocket and scribbled down his phone number. "If you ever need help again or whatever." Olivia took the paper, surprised. "Does this mean our deal is changing? I thought after today I was supposed to go back to my world and you to yours." Ethan shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. "Just in case." As they parted ways at the bus stop, Olivia turned back to him. "I'm coming back tomorrow. There's a book drive at the community center, right? I have boxes of books I don't need any more." "Olivia." "Just books," she insisted. "Not charity, a donation that was going to happen anyway." Ethan knew he should discourage her, tell her to stay in her safe, privileged bubble. Instead, he found himself nodding. "Tomorrow, then." Watched as she boarded the bus, her copper hair catching the sunlight through the window as the bus pulled away. Something told him his life had just taken a turn he hadn't anticipated and wasn't entirely sure he wanted. What he didn't see was the black sedan parked half a block away, where Ray Colton sat behind the wheel, watching them both through binoculars, a satisfied smile spreading across his face as he made a call. "Marcus? Yeah, I found our leverage. The Bennett girl's got herself a little charity project, some street kid from Englewood, and I think she's sweet on him." He chuckled darkly. "Bennett ruined our lives to protect his precious reputation. Let's see how he likes having his family dragged through the mud." Marcus Dawson's apartment in Rogers Park was a far cry from the lakefront condo he'd once owned. Now he lived in a one-bedroom unit with peeling paint and unreliable heating, a constant reminder of how far he'd fallen since Bennett Technologies had terminated him. "You sure about this?" he asked Ray, who was pacing the small living room. "Following the daughter seems risky. Bennett's security is no joke." Ray stopped, pacing, and pulled up a photo on his phone. A grainy shot of Olivia and Ethan sitting on the bench near Monroe Gardens. "Look at this, Marcus. The golden princess of Bennett Tech slumming it with some homeless kid. You know what the board would think if these pictures got out? What Bennett's high society friends would say. So what, we're going to blackmail him? With photos of his daughter hanging out with a poor kid? That's your master plan?" Marcus shook his head. "Bennett won't care. He'll buy off any media outlet that tries to run it." "It's not about the photos," Ray said, his voice dropping. "It's about what they represent. An entry point. A weakness." He sat down across from Marcus. "Remember what we found? The falsified government contracts. The safety protocols Bennett ignored on the Arlington Heights project. The money laundering through those shell companies." Marcus winced. How could he forget? They'd stumbled across the irregularities in the accounting system while upgrading the company's security protocols. Being the ethical fools they were, they'd reported it through proper channels instead of keeping quiet. 3 weeks later, both had been terminated for performance issues, with thinly veiled threats to stay silent or face legal consequences. "We tried going to the authorities," Marcus reminded him. "No one would touch it. Bennett's got too many friends in high places." "Because we didn't have enough concrete evidence," Ray countered, "but we know where to find it. All those documents are still on the company servers, buried in encrypted files only Bennett and his inner circle can access." "And how exactly does the daughter's charity case help us get those files?" Ray smiled thinly. "Bennett's one weakness has always been his reputation. He built that company on his image as Chicago's most upstanding business leader. We're going to use his daughter to force him to give us access to those files. Once we have them, we take everything to the press. No threats, no blackmail, just..." The truth finally coming to light. Marcus looked skeptical. "And the kid, how does he factor in?" "Leverage," Ray replied simply. "Bennett will do anything to keep his daughter safe and his reputation intact. From what I observed, she's getting attached to this boy. We use that." Marcus stared at his former colleague, a man he'd once respected. "This isn't who we are, Ray. We were the good guys, remember? The ones trying to do the right thing. That was before Bennett destroyed our careers and threatened our families, Ray snapped. I haven't seen my kids in months because I can't afford child support. My ex-wife thinks I'm a failure. All because we tried to do the right thing. His eyes hardened. Now I'm just trying to survive and make Bennett pay for what he did. Marcus sighed, knowing he couldn't talk Ray out of this path. And truth be told, part of him wanted justice too. Or was it revenge? The line had blurred months ago. What's our first move? He finally asked. Ray's smile widened. We need to know more about the boy. Let's find out exactly who Ethan Riley is. Olivia arrived at the community center the next day with 4 boxes of books stacked in the back of her father's company car. The driver, Mr. Simmons, had been unusually quiet during the trip, though she'd caught him watching her in the rearview mirror more than once. I'll just be an hour, she told him, as she struggled to lift the first box. You don't have to wait. Your father's... Instructions were clear, Ms. Bennett, Simmons replied, stepping out to help her. I'm to remain with you at all times. Olivia froze. What? Since when? Since this morning. Simmons lifted 2 boxes effortlessly. He's concerned about your safety. Did he say why? No, ma'am, just that I'm not to leave you unattended in this neighborhood. Olivia bit back a retort. Of course, her father would overreact without even talking to her first. That was his way, controlling everything from a distance without actual conversation. As they approached the community center's entrance, she spotted Ethan helping an elderly woman up the steps. He looked different today, more at ease in his key environment, less guarded, until he saw her. Then his posture stiffened, eyes darting from her to Simmons with instant suspicion. Who's this? He asked when she reached him. My father's driver, Olivia explained, setting down her box. Apparently, I need a babysitter now. Ethan nodded to Simmons, who returned the gesture with a professional detachment that didn't quite hide his assessment of the teenager. I'll take those inside, Miss Bennett, Simmons said, gathering the remaining boxes. As he passed Ethan, he added in a lower voice, I've got my eye on you, kid. Once Simmons was inside, Ethan turned to Olivia. Your dad sent a bodyguard to watch me? To watch me, Olivia corrected, but I didn't know until we arrived. I think he tracked my location yesterday and freaked out. Smart man, Ethan said, surprising her. This isn't a safe area for someone like you to be wandering around alone. Someone like me, Olivia raised an eyebrow. You know what I mean. Ethan gestured vaguely at her entire presence. You stand out. So help me blend in, she challenged, and teach me. Ethan studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Fine, first lesson. Lose the designer sneakers. They're practically screaming. Rob me. Olivia glanced down at her white Alexander McQueens. These old things? Ethan just shook his head, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. Come on, princess, let's get these books inside. The community center was bustling with activity. Children in an after-school program, seniors playing cards, a young woman teaching a free yoga class in one corner. Olivia was struck by the warmth of the place, the sense of genuine community despite the limited resources. Mrs. Hernandez, the center's director, greeted Olivia with enthusiastic gratitude for the book donation. These will be wonderful for our lending library. The children have read our current books so many times the pages are falling out. As Olivia helped shelve the books, she noticed Ethan moving around the center with easy familiarity. He fixed a leaky faucet in the bathroom, helped a young boy with math homework, tuned an old piano in the corner, all while various people greeted him by name. You're like the center's handyman, she observed later, as they sorted through the last box. Of books. I help where I can, Ethan shrugged. They let me use the shower here and sometimes crash on the couch in the office when the weather's bad. Fair trade. So you really don't have anywhere permanent to stay? Home is a flexible concept in my world. He handed her a stack of children's books. These go on the bottom shelf. As Olivia arranged the books, a young girl of about 7 approached, staring at her with undisguised curiosity. Your hair is pretty, the girl said. Like Ariel. Olivia smiled. Thank you. I'm Olivia. I'm... Zoe, can you read to us? She pointed to a circle of children gathering for story time. Miss Linda is sick today and nobody else does the voices right. Before Olivia could respond, Ethan cut in. I'm sure Olivia needs to get going, Zoe. Her driver is waiting. I can stay, Olivia said quickly, looking to where Simmons stood by, the door checking his watch. Just for one story. One story turned into three, with Olivia doing all the character voices as the children giggled and gasped at the right moments. Ethan watched from the sidelines, his expression unreadable. When she finally finished, the children applauded, and Zoe gave her a tight hug. You have to come back, the little girl insisted. I'd like that, Olivia replied, surprised to realize how much she meant it. As she gathered her things to leave, Ethan walked her to the door. You were good with them, he admitted. Didn't expect that. There's a lot you don't know about me, Olivia replied. Yeah, well, there's a lot you don't know about this place either, Ethan countered. It's not all heartwarming story time and community gardens. It's also desperation and struggle, and people doing whatever it takes to survive. Then show me more, Olivia challenged. The real version, not the sanitized tour. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Why? What do you get out of this? It was a fair question, one Olivia hadn't fully answered for herself. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I want to understand. I'm tired of living in a bubble. Understanding doesn't change anything. Maybe not, but ignorance definitely doesn't. Their conversation was interrupted by Simmons clearing his throat pointedly. Ms. Bennett, your father is expecting you for dinner at 7. Olivia sighed. I have to go, but I meant what I said. I want to come back. Your bodyguard might have other ideas. Ethan nodded toward Simmons, who was watching them with thinly veiled disapproval. I'll handle him, Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. Saturday? I could help with the children's program. Your choice, Princess, Ethan said, the nickname softening into something less mocking than before. Just don't expect me to save you if you get into trouble again. Olivia smiled. Yes, you will, she said simply, and walked toward the waiting car. As they drove away, she noticed Ethan standing in the doorway of the center, watching until they turned the corner. She also noticed Simmons making a phone call, his voice too. Low for her to hear the words, but she could guess who was on the other end. Her father would be waiting when she got home, full of questions and warnings and restrictions. The familiar pattern of their relationship since her mother's passing. Him controlling, her resisting, neither actually communicating. But something had changed in Olivia. The carefully constructed walls of her privileged existence had developed. A crack, offering a glimpse of a reality she'd never considered before. And instead of feeling frightened by it, she felt oddly awakened. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that as her car pulled away from the curb, another vehicle started, its engine half a block down. Inside, Ray Colton picked up his phone. I found a way in, he said to Marcus. The girl's coming back on Saturday. That's when we make our move. The Bennett penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a sleek glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan. Designed by a renowned architect, it featured soaring ceilings, minimalist furniture, and an impressive art collection that Olivia's mother had curated before her passing. It was beautiful, pristine, and utterly cold, much like the dinner conversation occurring at the glass dining table. Englewood. William Bennett's voice was controlled, but Olivia recognized the anger simmering beneath. Do you have any idea how dangerous that neighborhood is? I was perfectly safe, Olivia insisted, pushing her barely touched salmon around her plate. I was at a community center, Dad, not some dark alley. A community center, William repeated, setting down his fork. And what exactly were you doing there? Donating books. They have a children's program that... And this boy Simmons mentioned. Who is he? Olivia hesitated. How much should she reveal about Ethan? Just someone who helps out at the center. He showed me around. William studied his daughter with the same analytical gaze he used in board meetings. Olivia, I understand you want to do charitable work. That's commendable. But there are proper channels for that. Safe, organized programs through the Bennett Foundation. I'll have my assistant arrange something appropriate. I don't want an arranged experience, Olivia countered, her frustration mounting. I want to actually make a difference, not just write checks from a distance like you do. The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them. William's expression hardened, the muscle in his jaw tightening. Those checks, as you dismissively call them, fund entire programs that help thousands of people, he said icily. The Bennett Foundation provides scholarships, housing assistance, and medical care across this city. You know nothing about my charitable work. Because you never talk about it, Olivia pushed back. You never talk about anything real. Not since Mom died. The mention of Caroline Bennett hung in the air between them, a line rarely crossed in their household. William's face paled slightly. This isn't about your mother, he said quietly. This is about your safety. I've indulged your independence, Olivia, but I draw the line at you putting yourself in danger. You will not return to that neighborhood. End of discussion. Dad, you can't just... I said it's the end of discussion. William stood, placing his napkin beside his plate with precise movements. I have work to finish. Good night, Olivia. He left the dining room without another word, retreating to his home office where he spent most of his evenings. Olivia remained at the table, anger and frustration churning inside her. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to the number Ethan had given her. Still coming Saturday, might need to be creative about transportation. In the Bennett Technologies headquarters, William sat in his darkened office staring at the file his private investigator had compiled on Ethan Riley. The boy's life was a study in survival against odds. Mother dead from untreated cancer. No father listed on the birth certificate. Brief stints in foster care before he repeatedly ran away. Dropping out of school at 15 while maintaining exceptional scores on standardized tests when he did attend. Employed sporadically for cash jobs. No criminal record despite his circumstances. Currently homeless, primarily staying at the abandoned Crawford Manufacturing Warehouse or occasionally at the Southside Community Center. William closed the file, troubled. The boy was precisely the type of at-risk youth the Bennett Foundation claimed to help. Under different circumstances, he might have been impressed by Ethan's resilience. But the timing of his appearance in Olivia's life felt too convenient, especially with Marcus Dawson and Ray Colton lurking nearby. He picked up the phone. Simmons, I need you to run a deeper check on any possible connection between Ethan Riley and our former employees, and increase surveillance on both the boy and the Dawson-Colton pair. As he hung up, William pulled open his desk drawer and removed a small photo frame he kept hidden there. Caroline holding a 7-year-old Olivia on the Lake Michigan shore, both laughing into the camera, red hair blowing in the wind. I'm trying to protect her, Caro, he whispered to the image of his late wife. But she's so much like you, stubborn, idealistic. He traced a finger over the photo. I can't lose her too. And Saturday morning arrived with a steady drizzle that turned Chicago's streets slick and gray. Olivia had told her father she was spending the day at her friend Megan's house working on a school project, the first direct lie she could remember telling him. The guilt gnawed at her, but not enough to change her mind. Megan dropped her off 3 blocks from the community center. You sure about this? Her friend asked, eyeing the neighborhood nervously through the rain-streaked windshield. My mom would freak if she knew I left you here. I'll be fine, Olivia assured her. Pick me up at 4, same spot. Text me every hour so I know you're alive, Megan insisted. Otherwise, I'm calling the police. Olivia laughed, but promised to check in regularly. As Megan's car disappeared around the corner, she pulled up her hood against the rain and hurried toward the community center. The building was quieter than before, the rainy Saturday keeping many of the usual visitors at home. Mrs. Hernandez greeted her warmly, putting her to work organizing donated clothes for an upcoming distribution. There was no sign of Ethan. He usually comes in later on Saturdays, Mrs. Hernandez explained when Olivia asked. That boy works so hard. Did you know he fixed our heating system last winter? Saved us thousands we didn't have. As the morning progressed, Olivia found herself drawn into the center's rhythms, helping children with art projects, sorting donations, listening to elderly residents' stories. By noon, she was so immersed that she almost missed Ethan's arrival. He stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his jacket, looking surprised to see her there. "You actually came back," he said, approaching her. "I said I would." Olivia handed him a towel from the stack she'd been folding. "You're soaked." Walked from downtown. Had a cash job this morning helping unload trucks at the market. He dried his face and hair. "No bodyguard today?" "I navigated around that particular obstacle," she said with a small smile. "Meaning your dad doesn't know you're here?" Ethan shook his head. "You rich kids and your rebellion. Let me guess, you told him you were at a friend's house?" Olivia's expression confirmed his guess. Ethan laughed, but it wasn't unkind. Classic. "Come on, they need help in the kitchen. Saturday lunch program." For the next 2 hours, they worked side by side, preparing and serving a hot meal to nearly 50 people from the surrounding blocks. Olivia was struck by the diversity of those who came, not just the homeless, as she'd expected, but working families, elderly couples, students. The face of economic struggle was more complex than she'd realized. "That man's a high school teacher," Ethan murmured, nodding toward a middle-aged man in a worn but clean sweater. "3 kids, wife has MS. His salary doesn't cover everything, so they come here twice a month." "How do you know so much about everyone?" Olivia asked as she ladled soup into bowls. "I listen," Ethan replied simply. "People tell their stories if you give them the chance." After the lunch rush subsided, Mrs. Hernandez insisted they take a break. They sat at a corner table with their own bowls of soup, watching the rain through the windows. "So what's your story, Ethan Riley?" Olivia asked. "You know all about everyone else, but you don't talk much about yourself." Ethan stirred his soup thoughtfully. "Not much to tell. Mom got sick when I was 14. Cancer. No insurance. No real treatment options. I dropped out of school to take care of her." His voice remained level, factual. "After she was gone, the apartment went too. Couldn't afford it. Been on my own since. No other family. None that wanted me." He shrugged. "It's fine, I manage." "What about school? You're obviously smart." "Got my GED last year. Perfect score, actually." A flash of pride crossed his face. "I still read whatever I can get my hands on. Physics, engineering, I like understanding how things work." Olivia watched him, seeing beyond the defensive barriers he maintained. "You could go to college. There are scholarships. For homeless kids with no permanent address?" Ethan's laugh was bitter. "The system isn't built for people like me, Olivia." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "Your dad's assistant called my mum asking how the project is going. She covered for us but said it was weird. Be careful." Olivia's stomach dropped. "I need to go," she said, showing Ethan the message. "My father's checking." "Tap on me." "Not surprised," Ethan said, standing. "I'll walk you to the bus stop." As they were gathering their things, Mrs. Hernandez approached with a worried expression. "Ethan, there are 2 men outside asking for you. They say they're from some youth program, but I've never seen them before." Ethan frowned, moving to the window to peek through the blinds. His body tensed immediately. "Marcus and Ray," he muttered. "How did they find me here?" "The guys from the other day?" Olivia asked, alarm rising in her voice. "Yeah," Ethan turned to her. "Is there another way out of here?" Mrs. Hernandez nodded. "Back door through the kitchen, but why?" "I'll explain later," Ethan promised, already guiding Olivia toward the kitchen. "Just tell them I haven't been here today." They slipped out the back door into the alley behind the center, rain still falling steadily. Ethan kept a firm grip on Olivia's arm as they navigated puddles and dumpsters. "Why are we running?" Olivia asked, struggling to keep up. "If they're looking for you—" "They're not looking for me," Ethan cut her off. "They're looking for us. Together." "What? Why would they—" "I don't know," Ethan admitted, pausing at the end of the alley to check the street. "But those guys have been hanging around watching me ever since you first showed up. Something's not right." A black sedan turned onto the street ahead, driving slowly as if searching for someone. Ethan pulled Olivia back into the shadows of the alley. "That's them," he whispered. "We need to get you out of here." Olivia pulled out her phone. "I'll call my friend to pick us up." "No time," Ethan said, eyeing the approaching car. "And no signal in this rain anyway. Follow me. I know a place we can lay low until they're gone." As they turned to retreat deeper into the alley, Olivia's phone buzzed again, a text breaking through despite the poor signal. The message from an unknown number sent ice through her veins. "Tell your father we know everything, the Arlington Heights contracts, the offshore accounts, everything. We have proof. 48 hours to respond, or it all goes public. We'll be in touch. With terms." Olivia stared at the screen, the words blurring as rain droplets hit the display. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking. "I think I know why they're following us." Ethan looked at the message, his expression grim. "This isn't about me," he said quietly. "It's about your father. And now, they're using you to get to him." The key? Black sedan had stopped at the mouth of the alley. A door opened. "Run," Ethan said, grabbing her hand. "Now!" They ran through a maze of back alleys and narrow passages, Ethan leading with the confidence of someone who had mapped every possible escape route in his territory. The rain intensified, soaking them completely, but also providing cover as they ducked behind dumpsters and darted through abandoned lots. "Where are we going?" Olivia gasped, struggling to keep up in her now sodden sneakers. "Somewhere safe," Ethan replied tersely, checking behind them for any sign of pursuit. "Somewhere they won't think to look." After 15 minutes of zigzagging through the neighborhood, they arrived at what appeared to be an abandoned church. The Gothic structure loomed grey and forgotten, its stained glass windows either broken or boarded up, a chain-link fence surrounding the property. Ethan led her to a section of fence partially hidden by overgrown bushes. He pulled it back to reveal a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. "Watch your step," he warned as they entered the church grounds. Inside, the building, the rain's patter on the roof echoed through the vast empty space. Most of the pews were gone, but the altar remained, along with a massive pipe organ in the choir loft. Light filtered through the few intact stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the dusty floor. "Welcome to St. Augustine's," Ethan said, his voice echoing slightly. "Closed down 8 years ago. Developer bought it, then went bankrupt before demolition. It's been in legal limbo ever since." "And you just found it?" Olivia asked, looking around in awe. "Sort of. I helped the last priest move out the remaining valuables before they locked it up. Father Mike gave me a key to the side door." He gestured to a narrow wooden staircase at the back. "There's a small room in the bell tower, dry, relatively warm, and with a view of the surrounding blocks. I stay here sometimes." They climbed the stairs, emerging into a small circular room beneath the church's bell. Ethan had clearly prepared it as an emergency shelter. A sleeping bag, some canned food, bottles of water. A battery-powered lantern and stacks of books lined the walls. "Not exactly your penthouse," he said with a self-conscious shrug. "It's amazing," Olivia replied. "Honestly, moving to one of the narrow windows that provided a panoramic view of the south side. You can see everything from here." "That's the idea." Ethan handed her a towel from a plastic bin. "You should dry off. Temperature drops fast in here once the sun goes down." As Olivia attempted to dry her hair, she pulled out her phone. "No signal," she muttered. "My friend's going to think something happened to me." "Something did happen," Ethan reminded her, his expression serious as he settled on a wooden crate opposite her. "Those guys are after you because of whatever your father did." "What was that text talking about? Arlington Heights contracts, offshore accounts?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't know. My father never discusses business with me." She hesitated. "But Arlington Heights sounds familiar. There was a big project there, some kind of security system for a new development. My father's company handled it." "And the men following us, you recognized their names when I mentioned them before?" "No, Olivia stopped, remembering. "Wait, Dawson and Colton. I did hear those names once. About 8 months ago, I overheard my father arguing with someone on the phone about handling the Dawson-Colton situation. He was really upset." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "So they worked for your father, and now they're threatening him with some kind of evidence?" "It seems that way." Olivia wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the towel. "What am I supposed to do now? I can't even call him to warn him." "Once the rain lets up, we can find a phone," Ethan said. "But you need to think carefully about what You're going to tell him. If these guys are serious about having evidence of wrongdoing. The implication hung in the air between them. Olivia's eyes flashed. My father isn't perfect, but he's not a criminal. Rich people have different definitions of criminality, Ethan replied evenly. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand. When you have power and money, you can bend a lot of rules without technically breaking them. You don't know my father, do you? The question was gentle but pointed. Olivia looked away, unwilling to answer. The truth was, she didn't know her father. Not really, not anymore. The warm, laughing man who'd once swung her onto his shoulders at the beach had disappeared, along with her mother, replaced by a distant executive who spoke more to his assistant than to his daughter. I need to warn him, she finally said. Whatever these men want, they're using me to get to him. He needs to know that. Ethan nodded. We'll figure it out. But we should wait a few hours. Let them give up searching in this area. They sat in silence for a while, the rain creating a soothing background rhythm as the afternoon light began to fade. Ethan lit the lantern, casting the small room in a warm glow. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. For what? For dragging you deeper into this mess. I should have just kept walking that first day. Olivia looked at him, really looked at him. The sharp angles of his face softened in the lamplight. The perpetual wariness in his eyes momentarily replaced with genuine concern. I'm not, she said quietly. Sorry, I mean, if you'd kept walking, we'd never have met. And despite everything, I'm glad we did. Something shifted in Ethan's expression, a subtle softening around his mouth. Yeah? Yeah, she smiled, a small, genuine thing that reached her eyes. You're the first person in a long time who actually sees me. Not my last name or my father's money, just me. Ethan leaned forward slightly, their knees almost touching in the small space. I see a brave, stubborn girl who doesn't know when to stay in her safe little bubble. And I see a guy who pretends not to care but helps everyone anyway, she countered. The tension between them was palpable, charged with something neither of them had expected to find. In that moment, the vast differences in their lives seemed to recede, leaving just two people connected by something neither could quite name. Ethan broke the moment first, clearing his throat and leaning back. We should make a plan, he said, his voice gruffer than before, for when we leave here. Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment that flared at the renewed distance between them. Right, a plan. William Bennett hadn't slept. His eyes burned from staring at computer screens, his head pounded from tension, and his hand shook slightly as he poured his third cup of coffee. The text message had arrived 8 hours ago, forwarded to him by Olivia's friend Megan's mother, with a concerned note. Margaret said Olivia received this while they were out shopping. Should I be worried? The threatening text had sent William into immediate action mode. He'd deployed his security team to find Olivia, only to discover she wasn't at Megan's house at all. Margaret finally admitted, tearfully, that she'd dropped Olivia at the Southside Community Center hours ago and was supposed to pick her up at 4. But Olivia never showed at the meeting point. Now it was nearly midnight, his daughter was missing, and the threatening message loomed over him like a guillotine. The Arlington Heights contracts, the offshore accounts, all the careful maneuvering and legal grey areas he'd navigated to save his company during the financial crisis years ago. Choices he'd justified as necessary for survival, for maintaining the jobs of thousands of employees, for securing Olivia's future. Any update? He asked as Simmons entered his home office. We've located her phone signal, sir, Simmons reported. It's stationary at an abandoned church in Englewood. St. Augustine's. The signal is weak, but it's definitely there. And Dawson and Colton? No, sign of them near the church, but we've confirmed they were at the community center earlier today. Witnesses saw them asking about a boy and a red-haired girl. William stood abruptly. I'm going there. Sir, I strongly advise against that. We should send in the security team first to... She's my daughter, Simmons. William's voice brooked no argument. And if Dawson and Colton are using her to get to me, I need to handle this personally. At least let me accompany you, sir. William nodded curtly. Have the car ready in 5 minutes. And Simmons? No police. Not yet. Yes, sir. As Simmons left to prepare, William opened his safe and removed a small key. It unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, where a sealed envelope contained documents he'd hoped never to revisit, the original paperwork from the Arlington Heights project, complete with the alterations he'd authorized to circumvent certain regulatory requirements, evidence that could destroy everything he'd built. He slipped the envelope into his jacket pocket. If Dawson and Colton wanted to negotiate, he'd be prepared. For Olivia, he'd sacrifice anything, even himself. The rain had finally stopped, leaving a damp chill in the air. Ethan and Olivia had spent hours talking, planning, and ultimately learning more about each other than either had expected to share. Now they sat side by side on the sleeping bag, shoulders touching, a comfortable silence between them. We should try to find a phone soon, Olivia said eventually. It's getting late. My dad's probably freaking out. Just a little longer, Ethan replied, glancing out the window at the glistening streets below. I want to make sure the coast is clear. Olivia nodded, then suddenly sat up straighter. Is that a car stopping in front of the church? Ethan moved to the window, peering down at the sleek black sedan that had pulled up to the curb. Could be them, he said tensely. Get back from the window. But Olivia remained beside him, watching as two men exited the vehicle. Even from this distance, she recognized one of them. That's my father, she gasped. And Simmons. Your father? Ethan's eyes widened. How did he find us? My phone. He must have tracked it. Olivia started for the stairs. I need to go down. If he's here, something's seriously wrong. Ethan caught her arm. Wait, what if it's a trap? What if Dawson and Colton are watching, waiting for you to come out? Olivia hesitated, torn between her instinct to run to her father and Ethan's logical caution. I can't just hide while he's down there looking for me. Then we go together, Ethan decided. Carefully. They descended the tower stairs quietly, moving through the darkened church toward the main entrance. Through the crack in the heavy wooden doors, they could see William and Simmons approaching, their figures illuminated by the car's headlights. Olivia pushed the door open. Dad? William spun around, relief washing over his face. Olivia! He rushed forward, pulling her into a tight embrace. Thank God. Are you hurt? Did they harm you? I'm fine, Dad, Olivia assured him, returning the hug despite her confusion. How did you know about Dawson and Colton? William's body tensed. He pulled back, looking at her with a mixture of concern and suspicion. How do you know those names? Before Olivia could answer, William noticed Ethan standing a few feet away, watching their reunion with cautious eyes. You must be Ethan Riley, William said, his voice cooling several degrees. And you're the CEO who fired those guys who are now after your daughter, Ethan replied bluntly. William's jaw tightened. He turned back to Olivia. We need to go. Now. It's not safe here. Dad, what's going on? Olivia demanded. Those men sent me a text about Arlington Heights contracts and offshore accounts. They said they have proof of something. What were they talking about? William glanced at Simmons, who stood alert by the church doors, then back to his daughter. The composed businessman facade cracked slightly, revealing something Olivia rarely saw, uncertainty. It's complicated, William began. Uncomplicated, Ethan cut in. Because those guys were willing to use your daughter to get to you. She deserves to know why. William's eyes narrowed at Ethan's intrusion, but after a moment his shoulders sagged slightly. You're right, he admitted, the words seeming foreign on his tongue. But not here. We need to go somewhere secure, both of you, he added, looking at Ethan. If they've connected you to Olivia, you might be in danger too. Ethan hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of going anywhere with William Bennett. I can take care of myself. Ethan, please, Olivia said softly. Come with us. Their eyes met, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Ethan nodded. Fine, but only until we sort this out. As they moved toward the church doors, Simmons suddenly held up his hand for silence. Sir, he whispered urgently, there's another vehicle approaching. No headlights. Through the crack in the door, they saw a dark van creeping up the street, stopping directly behind William's sedan. "Back door," Ethan said immediately, grabbing Olivia's hand. "There's another way out through the rectory." William nodded to Simmons, who drew a concealed weapon from his jacket. "Go with them," William ordered. "I'll deal with this." "Dad, no," Olivia protested. "It's me they want," William said firmly. "Not you. Go with Ethan and Simmons. I'll meet you at the safe house." "What safe house?" Olivia demanded. But Ethan was already pulling her toward the back of the church, Simmons following close behind. The last glimpse Olivia had of her father was his silhouette against the church doors, shoulders squared, facing whatever came next. Alone? The safe house turned out to be a modest lakeside cabin in Michigan, about 2 hours from Chicago. Owned through a shell company with no connection to Bennett Technologies, it was William's emergency contingency plan, a place to retreat if things ever went catastrophically wrong. For Olivia, it felt surreal to be sitting in this rustic living room with Ethan and Simmons, waiting for word from her father. After their narrow escape from the church, running through the rectory and out to a backup vehicle Simmons had stationed nearby, they'd driven in tense silence across state lines, each lost in their own thoughts. "He should have contacted us by now," Olivia said, pacing the cabin's worn wooden floors. Morning light streamed through the windows, revealing the sleepless night on her face. "Your father can handle himself," Simmons assured her, though his frequent checking of his secure phone betrayed his own concern. "He's dealt with corporate threats before." "Not like this," Olivia countered. "Not with people following me, sending threatening messages." Ethan sat quietly by the window, observing the dynamic between Olivia and Simmons. He felt profoundly out of place in this situation, a street kid suddenly thrust into a high-stakes corporate drama. Yet he couldn't bring himself to leave. Not while Olivia's safety remained uncertain. "What exactly did your father do to these guys?" he finally asked. "Why are they so determined to get back at him?" Simmons gave him a measuring look before answering. "Mr. Dawson and Mr. Colton were cybersecurity specialists at Bennett Technologies. They were terminated last year during a company restructuring." "That's the official story," Ethan said skeptically. "What's the real one?" Before Simmons could respond, the secure phone buzzed. He answered immediately, his expression shifting from concern to relief. "Yes, sir, understood. We'll expect you within the hour." He hung up and turned to Olivia. "Your father is fine. He's on his way here now." Olivia collapsed onto the sofa, tension draining from her body. "What happened? Did he talk to Dawson and Colton?" "He didn't say, just that he's resolved the situation and will explain everything when he arrives." The next hour crawled by. Simmons busied himself securing the perimeter of the property, while Olivia tried unsuccessfully to nap on the sofa. Ethan remained by the window, watching the dirt road that led to the cabin, feeling increasingly like an intruder in a private family drama. "You don't have to stay, you know," Olivia said softly, coming to stand beside him. "Once my dad gets here, Simmons can take you back to Chicago." Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "And leave before I find out how this soap opera ends. No way." Olivia smiled slightly, but it faded quickly. "I'm scared, Ethan. Not of those men, but of whatever my father did that made them so desperate." "People do complicated things for complicated reasons," Ethan replied. "Sometimes to survive, sometimes to protect others." He finally turned to look at her. "Sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't as clear as we want it to be." "Spoken like someone who's had to walk that line," Olivia observed. Ethan shrugged. "We've all got our stories." The crunch of tires on gravel interrupted their conversation. A dark SUV was approaching the cabin, dust billowing behind it on the dirt road. "He's here," Olivia breathed, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her voice. William Bennett looked older than he had the previous night, the weight of whatever had transpired etched in the lines around his eyes. He entered the cabin slowly, his gaze immediately finding his daughter. "Olivia," he said, and something in his voice had changed, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. He crossed the room and embraced her tightly, as if reassuring. himself that she was real and safe. When they finally separated, William nodded to Simmons, who tactfully stepped outside to give them privacy. Then his eyes fell on Ethan, who remained by the window, uncomfortable but resolute. "Mr. Riley," William acknowledged, "thank you for protecting my daughter." Ethan nodded once, surprised by the genuine gratitude in the older man's voice. William gestured to the sofa. "Please, both of you, sit. I owe you an explanation." They settled in the living room, Olivia and Ethan on the sofa, William in an armchair across from them. For a long moment he seemed to gather his thoughts, fingers steepled beneath his chin, in a characteristic gesture that Olivia recognized from countless business discussions. 8 years ago, he began, after your mother passed away, Bennett Technologies was struggling. The recession had hit us hard. Contracts were being cancelled and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. He looked directly at Olivia. Everything your mother and I had built together was about to collapse, including the future I'd promised her, I'd secure for you. Olivia remained silent, sensing this was a story her father had never intended to tell. I was approached about a government contract, a security system for a new development in Arlington Heights. It was exactly what we needed to stay afloat, but there were requirements, specifications that would have taken years to develop properly. William's voice remained steady, but shame flickered in his eyes. I authorized shortcuts. We modified existing systems and presented them as new designs that met all the requirements. The buildings passed inspection, the systems were installed, and Bennett Technologies survived. You lied, Olivia said softly. You falsified reports. William nodded once. Yes, the Arlington Heights contract saved the company. It allowed us to stabilize, to grow, to become what we are today. And no one was ever harmed. The systems work, just not to the exacting specifications that were originally mandated. And the offshore accounts? Olivia pressed, remembering the threatening text. William's jaw tightened. Tax optimization strategies, legal but aggressive. They wouldn't look good to the public or our shareholders if exposed. Ethan, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. So when Dawson and Colton found out about this, you fired them and threatened them to keep quiet. I protected my company, William replied, an edge entering his voice. I protected the livelihoods of thousands of employees. I protected my daughter's future by destroying theirs, Ethan countered. William's gaze hardened as he looked at Ethan. You have no idea what was at stake. Dad, Olivia interjected, what happened last night? With Dawson and Colton? William's expression softened as he turned back to his daughter. I met with them. They showed me what evidence they had. Quite comprehensive, actually. Copies of the modified specifications, email trails, financial records. And? Olivia prompted when he paused. And we came to an agreement. William reached into his jacket and removed a folded document. I've signed a confession detailing everything I just told you, plus the full extent of the financial manipulations. They have the only copy, which they've placed in secure storage. In exchange, they've agreed not to go public with the information. Just like that? Ethan asked skeptically. They blackmail you, threaten your daughter, and then just agree to sit on evidence that could bring down your company. Not quite that simple, William admitted. I also agreed to reinstate them both with back pay and promotions, and he hesitated. I'm establishing a foundation specifically focused on corporate transparency and whistleblower protection, with them on the oversight board. Olivia stared at her father in disbelief. You're giving the people who threatened me positions of power in your company. I'm acknowledging that they were right, William replied quietly. What they did was wrong, but what I did first was worse. They tried to report these issues through proper channels. I silenced them. He looked down at his hands. Sometimes we have to face the consequences of our choices, even years later. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications of William's confession sank in. What happens now? Olivia finally asked. To the company? To you? I've already spoken with our board chairman. I'll be stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. The company will issue a statement about my retirement to pursue philanthropic interests. William's smile was tired but genuine. It's not a lie. I do intend to focus on philanthropy. Real philanthropy, not just writing checks. He turned to Ethan, his gaze assessing but not unkind. Mr. Riley, I understand you've been living in precarious circumstances despite considerable intelligence and potential. Ethan tensed, uncomfortable with the sudden attention. I manage. Yes, I can see that you do, rather remarkably. William leaned forward. I'd like to offer you an opportunity, a position with the Bennett Foundation, helping to develop programs for at-risk youth. Room and board included, as well as college tuition if you're interested in furthering your education. Ethan stared. At him, suspicion warring with surprise. Why would you offer me that? Because you protected my daughter when I couldn't, William said simply, and because talent shouldn't be wasted due to circumstance. Ethan glanced at Olivia, who looked as shocked as he felt. I don't need your charity, Mr. Bennett. It's not charity, William replied. It's an investment in someone who's already proven their worth. He stood, straightening his jacket. Think about it. The offer stands regardless of your answer. He moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to his daughter. Olivia, I need to return to Chicago to deal with the board and the transition. You're welcome to stay here for a few days if you'd like some space to process everything. Simmons will remain for security. Olivia stood, studying her father, as if seeing him clearly for the first time in years. You're really stepping down? Giving up everything you've built? Not everything, William said quietly, his eyes softening as they rested on her. Just the parts that were built on compromise. The important things, you, our family legacy, the good we can still do, those remain. He hesitated, then added, Your mother would have been disappointed in the choices I made. But I hope she would approve of how I'm trying to make amends. Olivia crossed the room and hugged her father tightly. I think she would too, she whispered. 3 months later, the South Side Community Center was hardly recognizable. Fresh paint brightened the walls, new furniture filled the rooms, and state-of-the-art computers lined the back wall of what was now called the Education Center. Outside, the once empty lot had been transformed into a proper garden with raised beds, benches, and a small playground. Ethan stood in the doorway of the main hall, watching volunteers set up for the center's reopening celebration. He still wasn't entirely comfortable with his new role as program director, or with the apartment he now occupied above the center, but he was adjusting to having a real address, to regular meals, to people counting on him in an official capacity, rather than just out of necessity. Nervous about your speech? Olivia asked, appearing beside him with a clipboard in hand. She'd taken on the role of volunteer coordinator with characteristic determination, splitting her time between the center and her senior year of high school. Terrified, Ethan admitted. Public speaking wasn't exactly part of my street. Education. Olivia bumped his shoulder with hers. You'll be great. Just talk about what this place means to you, what it can mean for others. Their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. Not quite romance, not quite friendship, but a profound connection built on mutual respect and shared purpose. They were taking it slow, both aware of the complicated circumstances that had brought them together and the very different worlds they still navigated. William arrived shortly before the ceremony, looking more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen him. Since stepping down as CEO, he'd become a different person, more present, more engaged, more human. He still maintained a position on the board of Bennett Technologies, but his primary focus now was the expanded Bennett Foundation and its new initiatives for community development and corporate ethics. Quite a transformation, William remarked, looking around the renovated center. Mrs. Hernandez must be thrilled. She cried when she saw the new kitchen, Ethan confirmed with a smile. William nodded, a hint of the businessman still evident in his assessing gaze. The board approved the additional funding for the satellite centers. We can break ground on the first one next month. That's great news, Olivia said, joining the conversation. Ethan's already identified the perfect location in West Garfield Park. William looked between the two of them, noting the easy way they communicated. the natural teamwork they'd developed. You two make quite an effective partnership. Ethan and Olivia exchanged a quick glance, a private smile passing between them. Different perspectives, same goals, Ethan said with a shrug that didn't quite hide his pride. The center gradually filled with community members, local officials, and media representatives. Mrs. Hernandez bustled about, directing volunteers and greeting guests with tearful embraces. Even Zoe was there, proudly showing visitors the new children's library named in honor of Ethan's mother. As the time for speeches approached, Ethan found himself standing at the back of the room, momentarily overwhelmed by the journey that had brought him here. From invisible street kid to program director, with a future he'd never dared imagine. "Second thoughts?" asked a familiar voice. Marcus Dawson stood beside him, looking considerably more polished in a new suit, his former hostility replaced with cautious respect. "About the speech?" "Definitely," Ethan replied honestly. Marcus chuckled. "Not about the speech, about all of this." He gestured to the transformed center, to William Bennett chatting with community members, to Olivia organizing the event with cheerful efficiency. About joining the Bennett world. Ethan considered the question seriously. "It's not about joining his world," he finally said, "or staying in mine. It's about creating something new, something better than either of us had before." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "For what it's worth, I think Bennett made the right choice with you, both for this place and for his daughter." Before Ethan could respond, Mrs. Hernandez called for everyone's attention. It was time for the ceremony to begin. William spoke first, his words carefully measured but genuinely heartfelt as he talked about community investment and second chances. Then Mrs. Hernandez, emotional but dignified, as she thanked the Bennett Foundation for giving the center a new life. And finally, it was Ethan's turn. He approached the podium slowly, scanning the faces watching him. People who'd known him as the quiet homeless kid who fixed things. Others who saw only the new program director in clean clothes, and Olivia, who somehow saw all versions of him and accepted each one. 3 months ago, Ethan began, his voice steadier than he'd expected. "I was living in an abandoned warehouse, collecting bottles to survive. I had no address, no prospects, and no reason to believe tomorrow would be any different from today." He paused, finding Olivia's encouraging smile in the crowd. "Then I met someone who changed everything, not by giving me handouts or pity, but by seeing me as a person with value. That single moment of recognition, of human connection, set off a chain reaction that brought us all here today." As he continued his speech, talking about the center's mission and his hopes for its future, Ethan realized that the most significant transformation wasn't in the building around him, or even in his external circumstances. It was in how he saw himself, no longer defined by survival alone, but by purpose, by connection, by the potential to create rather than just endure. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Ethan and Olivia slipped away to the rooftop. Garden, another new addition to the center. The Chicago skyline stretched before them, the gleaming towers of downtown a stark contrast to the more modest buildings of the South Side. "Your speech was perfect," Olivia said, leaning against the railing beside him. "I think you made Mrs. Hernandez cry again." Ethan smiled. "I think Mrs. Hernandez just likes crying. She says it cleanses the soul." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights come on as dusk settled. "Do you ever miss it?" Olivia asked suddenly. "Your old life? The freedom of it?" Ethan considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Not the hunger or the cold or the constant vigilance, but the simplicity in a way, knowing exactly what I needed to do each day just to survive." He glanced at her. "Now everything's possibilities and choices and responsibilities. It's harder in a different way." "But worth it?" "Definitely worth it." His hand found hers on the railing, their fingers intertwining naturally. "What about you? Do you miss your old life, the luxury, the privilege?" Olivia shook her head. "I never felt alive there. Just contained, like a well-tended plant in a decorative pot." She turned to face him fully. This is real. What we're doing here is real. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Below them, the sounds of the celebration continued. Laughter, music, the buzz of community in action. William appeared in the garden, doorway hesitating when he saw them together. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "The mayor just arrived. She'd like to meet you both." "We'll be right down, Dad," Olivia assured him. William nodded but remained in the doorway for a moment longer, watching them with an expression that mixed fatherly concern with something like satisfaction. Then he disappeared back into the building, giving them their privacy. "He's really changed," Ethan observed. "We all have." Olivia squeezed his hand. "That's what happens when worlds collide, I guess. Nothing stays the same." Ethan looked out at the city skyline one more time, then back to Olivia, to the future that somehow now seemed possible. "I'm counting on that," he said softly. Together they turned away from the view and headed back to join the celebration. No longer a rich girl and a poor boy from separate worlds, but partners in something new they were building together, one day at a time. In the main hall, William watched his daughter and Ethan rejoin the event, moving among the guests with easy confidence. The transformation in Olivia over the past months had been remarkable, from a sheltered, somewhat rebellious teenager to a young woman with purpose and passion. And Ethan, despite his initial wariness, had proven to be exactly what William had first recognized in him: exceptionally intelligent, resourceful, and principled. Ray Colton approached, champagne flute in hand. Their relationship remained professional, but cool, both men aware of the leverage the other still held. "Quite the success story," Ray commented, nodding toward Ethan and Olivia. "The street kid and the heiress changing the world together." "They're young enough to believe they can," William replied, "old enough to actually do it." "And you?" Ray asked, his tone careful. "Found redemption in philanthropy?" William considered the question, watching as his daughter laughed at something Ethan said. "Not redemption," he finally answered, "just a better path forward." Ray nodded, understanding the distinction. "Those documents we discussed, the ones in secure storage, you should know that Marcus and I have agreed that if the Foundation continues on its current trajectory for 5 years, they'll be destroyed, permanently." William turned to him, surprised. "Why would you do that?" "Because revenge doesn't build anything," Ray said simply. "And maybe I'm tired of looking backward." He set down his glass and extended his hand. "Fresh start, Bennett?" William hesitated only briefly before shaking the offered hand. Fresh start. As Ray walked away, William felt a weight lift from his shoulders, not completely, but enough to stand straighter, breathe deeper. The mistakes of his past would always be part of him, but they no longer defined his future. Across the room, Ethan caught his eye and gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Not quite acceptance, not quite friendship, but a bridge being built between two men from different worlds who now shared what mattered most: the well-being of a remarkable young woman and the community she'd come to love. William nodded back, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it not as adversaries or even reluctant allies, but as family, complicated, imperfect, but committed to something larger than themselves. Outside the windows of the renovated center, Chicago continued its eternal rhythm of light and shadow, wealth and poverty, struggle and triumph. But within these walls, something had changed. A small corner of the city had been transformed not just by money or good intentions, but by genuine connection across the invisible barriers that too often divided humanity. And that, William reflected, as he watched his daughter in this new world she'd helped create, was a legacy Caroline would have been proud of. A legacy worthy of the Bennett name, not because of its power or prestige, but because of its purpose. "Dad!" Olivia called, waving him over to where she stood with Ethan and Mrs. Hernandez. "Come see the plans for the Youth Entrepreneurship program. Ethan's idea is brilliant." William moved to join them, stepping forward into this unexpected but welcome